Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building. She's running for Senate, Houston City Council member Amanda Edwards. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much. We love the H-Town. We love Houston.
Yes, I was just telling her about that. And we had a great conversation before these mics came on.
Yes.
So let's talk about this groundbreaking run that you have and the supporters that you have in Houston, because a lot of people supporting her are our people.
That's right. And one of the things that's really important, before I got in here, people were saying, why does this even matter? Why would you go on the Breakfast Club to even talk about this? This is a national race, and this is an opportunity not just to make history, but actually to make a difference in the lives of everybody in this country. If you haven't seen it play out, we're watching the impeachment trial as we speak, and the U.S. Senate is a critical role. This is one of 100 seats. So we're really excited about the opportunity to make history, but most importantly, the opportunity to make a difference. So I was just sharing with Angela just a few minutes ago that I went to high school with some of the folks that are supporting me.
Paul Wall.
Slim Thug. Yeah, we went to high school together.
So what got you into politics?
Yeah, I mean, really, the truth is, it's one of the things where you can either just be a spectator and have opinions about things,
Right.
or you can go in there and do something about it. And for me, I don't actually really like politics that much, but I love the ability to make a difference, serve people, and then, of course, have an impact, because that's what this is supposed to be about. The job is supposed to be about actually making a difference for people.
Helping people.
Well,
That's
Amanda,
right.
let's talk about your background, because you're also an attorney.
Yes.
So what kind of attorney?
I was a municipal finance attorney. So
What was that?
So I was building schools and hospitals, doing the financing for those projects. So basically, like what we were talking about earlier, bringing capital to the table. You know, now as an elected official, or I just gave up my seat to run, but I've been doing things now to try to promote access to capital for women and minority-owned businesses, because in our country, women and minority-owned businesses, minorities are 3 times less likely to gain access to capital than their non-minority counterparts. So that's like 3 times the number of rejections. And how many people are going to quit in that process, right? A lot of people will quit and say, oh, I didn't get the bank loan. I guess that business is not for me. And we've got to make sure that we don't just talk about diversity and talk about inclusion. We also have to make sure that we're solving some of the challenges that impact diverse communities.
And especially Black and brown women, the numbers that we get are lower than any other numbers as far as how much people do invest when you do get that capital.
That's exactly right. And so and this is the stuff that makes our communities work. You know, mom and pop shops, bigger enterprises, it doesn't really matter. The statistics are what they are, which is that those are real disparities. And if we're not trying to invest in people and help them support themselves, their families, and their communities, then we're not going to be a really successful country the way we should.
Now you went to school with Paul Wall and Slim Thug.
I did.
Do they support you? Do they have your back?
Yes, they support me.
What about
You're hearing it here live.
What about Trey, too? What about Trey?
Trey, yes.
Mr.
And
Rogers?
in fact, yes, Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
And in fact, Trey and I did a lot of work on when Hurricane Harvey happened. It was 51 inches of rainfall that came across our city. And this was in 2017. And so he did a whole lot of rescue and a lot of work that he did in the community. But that was one of the first ways that I really got a chance to get to know him, meet with him. He's come out and talked to some kids that we work with and done some work, you know, in terms of just really trying to help the community. So I'm really grateful for the community we have in Houston supporting me. But it's not just Houston, it's a statewide race. So we've got I had an opportunity to meet Bishop Jakes that y'all just talked to not too long ago. Had an opportunity to meet him recently about some of the work he's doing, and so we just have to get around not just the state, the country as well, because this is a national race.
How do we flip the Senate? And why is it so important to flip the Senate? Because I don't think a lot of people understand.
Well, look at what's happening with impeachment. And people don't realize that these are the folks who get to they're making the rules as we speak. Do we have witnesses? I mean, just think about that, right? So when you think about having a trial, if you will, not the notion of not having witnesses come to the table. I mean, they get to set the rules. Right now, Mitch McConnell, the majority leader, he has hundreds of bills sitting on his desk. And I'm talking about bills that could actually make a difference between life and death for people. Prescription drug costs. In this country, there was a lady I got to interview when I was on the campaign trail earlier on, who was an elderly woman. She rations her prescription drugs every day. So she takes in the morning her prescription drug, and then she's supposed to take another dose at night. And what she does instead is that she just takes the prescription drug component in the morning, and she goes and takes over-the-counter drugs at night.
Wow.
And so that's the country we're living in. We've got senators who are in these positions that that's not of concern. Their concern is about playing politics with people's lives as opposed to really doing the job that they were elected to do and serving people and delivering the results.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, I often think that, Senate seats are more important because even if we do vote Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Biden in, they won't be able to get anything done.
Not a
with
thing.
a Republican-led Senate.
Not a thing. And that's what's happened. And so we cannot, for those who are saying, the Senate, what is that what is that really about? You cannot send a new president into the White House if you don't have people around him or her to support them with regard to actually passing the measures that we need to see. It requires you to pass on the House side and requires you to pass on the Senate side. And what is happening is that the Senate has become the place where bills go to die.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And we're not talking about just, pet projects. We're talking about real life-saving stuff. And when I got in, a lot of the times people say, well, why do you want to run for office in general? But what's motivating you behind that? And for me, when I was growing up, my dad had cancer. He was diagnosed with cancer when I was 10 years old. And in my house, we learned what access to health care coverage was by virtue of me asking my dad questions about whether he was going to get treated or not. He had, at that time, he was getting experimental stem cell treatments, which was like Jetson stuff back then. And I remember asking my dad, I said, well, what happens if they say no? And my dad would say, well, we'll just have to figure something else out. And I said, well, what if somebody can't figure something else out?
Right.
And the truth in real life for a lot of people, that's life or death. And so when we have people like John Cornyn, who is going to be my opponent in the general election, who has voted to overturn the Affordable Care Act half a dozen times with no replacement, just to overturn because he didn't like the name of the president who was president when it was passed, I have a problem with that.
Right.
Yeah, because these are people's lives, and I've lived that experience. And my father did pass away when I was 17, and he did get coverage, but there's so many people who do not. And I just think about the lessons I learned from having my father around that much longer, and I could not, in good conscience, just sit there because it's not so comfortable for me to run in the seat. Of course, it would have been more comfortable for me to run for my reelection for city council. But you need people in the spaces and places where they're needed and can impact that change, especially when you have so much riding on this.
What was that moment when you decided, I'm going to give up my city council seat and I'm going to run for Senate? Like, what prompted that? Did you know for a long time this was always the plan, or was it something that prompted that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And no, I did not have this on my bucket list of things to do for 2020. Really and truly, I was planning to run for re-election for my city council race. I've been representing 2.3 million people over the last 4 years. Really love my work. And the question became a ripe one when Beto ran and came within 215,000 votes of winning in a time when people were like, Texas, it's been a Republican mainstay for decades now. And so when he came within 215,000 votes, I had some folks come up to me and ask me, have you ever thought about this? And I was like, nope. And wasn't necessarily trying to think about it until we really started to peel past the surface and learn that Beto did extremely well when it came to what we call persuadable voters. Those are folks who are kind of in the suburbs, independent voters, not consistent Democratic voters. He got those folks coming out in droves to support him. But where there was an opportunity left on the table was we saw that there were high numbers of Black and brown people who had registered to vote but didn't turn back out to vote in those high numbers. They were under 50% of their registered numbers. Same thing held true with regard to people under the age of 35. High registration, but they were under 50% of their registered numbers. So then the question becomes, what if you can find a candidate whose politics will allow her, that's me, to get folks in the middle like Beto did, but add to that. And so instead of it just being about the persuadable voter, expand the pie, make it about persuadable voters, make it about communities, Black and brown communities, make it about also young people.
Right.
And the question is, well, how will you do that? And the answer is this. When Harvey happened in 2017, 51 inches of rainfall came across the city. And I went and checked on some of our senior citizens just to see how they were doing. Somebody called me and said, hey, there's some folks that need some help, more help. And I remember going to their homes and I'd ask them, what are they doing to clean out their houses? And they say, oh, my grandchild's going to help me remove some of the furniture. And I said, well, what about your walls? Because those too had been soiled by the floodwaters, right? And in each house that I visited, they'd say to me, oh, well, those walls are already dry. And of course, as you know, you can't let those walls stay in those homes. Otherwise, those folks are going to be exposed to mold contamination.
All types of mold.
That's right. That's right. So I mobilized hundreds of volunteers to go out door to door and check on these seniors. Well, the interesting thing was when I'd go on their doorsteps, and, I was really proud of that, getting folks either connected to volunteers or nonprofits that were helping to remove the walls. And when I'd go on those doorsteps, the first thing they'd say to me was, "Oh, are you up for re-election?" And it was sad because in the face of the second worst disaster in U.S. history in terms of dollars and cents, the first thing that comes to your mind is that I'm standing on your doorstep today because I must need something from you rather than to be here to do my job and to deposit into your life. And that's the paradigm that has to be changed. And I deal with that reality. And when somebody who's part of that crowd who did not come back out to vote last cycle, a lot of the times when you see like high registration and lower turnout, it's because there's a motivation question, right? Like it's like, will this really matter for me? I can see it mattering for these other folks, but will this matter in my life?
Right.
And the question that you have to be able to answer is yes, despite the fact that we know you've heard this speech before, this can make a difference in your lives. The question they would ask is, why should I believe you? Because it has for the people that I've represented. And you've got to have a messenger who has been in the trenches, working with the communities, delivering results for the communities. Because I will tell you this about the exploitation of electoral politics and just how this all works. We know how to find people's homes very easily in terms of getting people out to vote. We know how many times you voted. We know exactly where you live, your voting history, and they show up. They got the cards. We have a whole operation. But when are people showing up to these homes when they need help?
Right.
Or when they need something delivered, or the promise that you made on the campaign trail? We need to deliver on those promises. That's why people get disconnected from democracy,
Right.
because they don't feel that it works for them.
Right.
I only see you when you need me for
Exactly,
something.
exactly.
So what do we do to energize people to come out and vote for you?
Absolutely. Well, first and foremost, we got to educate them. And this is one of the things that people have to know. It's a statewide Texas race. So only, obviously, people in Texas can vote for me, but people nationwide can be spreading the word because we have a competitive primary on our hands. It's going to be March the 3rd.
Okay.
Early vote starts February the 18th. So people need to be getting registered to vote. Make sure they're registered. The next piece is spread the word and then also contribute. These campaigns cost money. They cost money. And people always say, oh, so-and-so dropped out or that person dropped out. Why didn't they say? Well, it costs money. We need that help. Making sure that people are supporting whatever that is, whatever that stretch is for people. Because if you want to see something different happen, you've got to be willing to invest in something different taking place. And so that requires that.
Amanda, when you win, you'll be the first black
Well, give
woman
me the information
senator
first since we're
in
talking
Texas.
about money. Tell them the information. too.
Yes, you can go on my website at www.amandafortexas.com. There's a beautiful button called Donate.
Donate.
And so go to that donate button and click. That would be super helpful to us. We have to travel the entire state of Texas, so I did not pick an easy race to get into, but it's worth it because of the difference it can make, not only just to be the face of change in that state, but to be the face of change in what's happening in this nation at this point in time.
Now, Amanda, would you be the first black woman to actually be a senator in Texas?
That is absolutely correct. We
Wow.
will be making history here.
Let's make
and
history.
we have an incumbent who has been sitting in that seat since 2003, not serving the needs of the people that he's supposed to represent. I think we are ready for change. I think change is happening right now as we speak, and so now is the opportunity to be part of that.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us. And again, go to amandafortexas.com. It's priorities, get involved, Woman for Amanda, and then donate. Hit that donate
that
button.
donate
That's right.
button.
And follow me on Twitter, Amanda for Texas, as well as Instagram, Amanda for Texas as well.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And good luck with everything.
Thank you.
We're going to be here supporting.
Thank
It's
you.
The Breakfast Club, and it's Amanda Edwards for U.S. Senate.